Hey guys, tonight we begin not with a medieval king on a stormy heath, but with something far more brutal and familiar. A family tearing itself apart in 1980s Detroit, because, believe it or not, Shakespeare's greatest tragedy fits perfectly into an era of power suits, hostile takeovers, and Reagan-era greed where kingdoms are measured in assembly lines instead of acres. From corporate boardrooms to factory floors, this is King Lear reimagined as an automotive empire collapsing under the weight of ambition, pride, and the simple human failure to understand that love isn't a transaction. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comments where you re-tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together, a tale of family, empire, and the price of mistaking power for love. The year is 1981, and Detroit sits under a grey November sky. Its skyline punctured by the glass towers of corporate America and the brick smokestacks of a dying industrial age. The streets smell of motor oil and desperation. Assembly lines that once roared with 3 shifts now sit silent in the afternoon. Japanese imports flood American driveways while unemployment lines snake around city blocks. The American dream rusts in factory parking lots. But Leo Kingston does not rust. At 73 years old, he stands at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his executive suite atop the Kingston Tower, looking down at the Detroit River like a king surveying his kingdom. His suit is charcoal grey, tailored on Savile Row, his silver hair swept back like a lion's mane. Behind him, the walls display the mythology of his life. Black and white photographs of the first Kingston automobile rolling off the line in 1946. Leo shaking hands with presidents. Leo at ribbon cuttings and factory openings. The Kingston name built not just cars, but an empire manufacturing plant in 5 states. Dealerships from coast to coast. Parts suppliers, tire factories, even a small steel mill in Pennsylvania. The empire is his body, and his body is failing. Leo Kingston suffered a heart attack 6 months ago. The doctors spoke in grave tones about time, about succession, about letting go, but Leo Kingston has never let go of anything in his life. He clawed his way up from the factory floor, from a childhood in a Detroit tenement where his father died of black lung and his mother took in laundry. He learned that the world belongs to those who grab it with both hands and never release their grip. Now, standing at these windows, he has made his decision. His 3 daughters will inherit everything. It is time to divide the kingdom. She is vice president of operations. A woman who dresses in power suits with shoulder pads sharp enough to cut, who wears her ambition like expensive perfume. Her office overlooks the same river, but her view faces the future, the luxury car market, European styling, the expansion into technology and electronics that will save American auto manufacturing. She has her father's hunger, his ruthlessness, his understanding that sentiment is a luxury the competitive cannot afford. Regina Kingston, middle daughter at 39, runs the Atlantic City Division Kingston Hotels and Leisure, the company's diversification into hospitality and entertainment. She operates from the boardwalk, where Kingston money built a casino and resort complex that glitters against the Atlantic like a promise of wealth. Regina inherited her father's charm, his ability to smile while calculating, to make people trust her even as she positions the knife. She wears diamonds and silk, drinks champagne at 11 in the morning, and never forgets a slight or a debt. Then there is Cordelia, 34 years old, And she has always been different. She works not from a tower but from the factory floor, from the union halls, from the communities where Kingston layoffs have gutted neighborhoods. Cordelia wears denim and boots, pulls her dark hair into a practical ponytail, and drives a 10-year-old Ford pickup with 100,000 miles on it. She studied labor, relations, and economics, and returned to Detroit not to manage the empire but to understand its human cost. She visits workers' homes, knows their children's names, sits at kitchen tables and listens to stories of foreclosure and food stamps. Leo Kingston built an empire. Cordelia sees the bodies it was built upon. The three daughters gather in the boardroom on a Monday morning when frost covers the windows and the river below flows dark as oil. The room is mahogany and leather, dominated by a table that could seat 30. Today it seats Leo at the head, his daughters arranged like chess pieces. "I'm dying," Leo says, and the words drop into the silence like a hammer on steel. Gina doesn't flinch. Regina's hand pauses halfway to her coffee cup. Cordelia simply looks at her father with those steady grey eyes that have always unnerved him. "The doctors give me 5 years if I'm lucky, 2 if I'm not," Leo continues. His voice is still strong, still carries the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I'm not interested in lingering like some decrepit relic while the company tears itself apart. The Japanese are eating us alive. Chrysler needed a government bailout. Ford is bleeding money. GM is too big to see its own death coming. Kingston Automotive will not follow them into irrelevance." He stands, moves to the windows, his kingdom spread below him. "I'm dividing the company, now, while I can still control the transition, while I can still ensure the legacy survives." Leo turns from the window, and in the cold morning light, he looks every bit the industrial titan he has always been: powerful, immovable, dangerous, even in decline. He places both hands on the mahogany table, leaning forward like a general before battle. "Here's how this works," he says. "I'm not just handing over the keys to 3 spoiled daughters. I need to know who deserves what. I need to hear in your own words what Kingston Automotive means to you. What I mean to you. Tell me why you've earned your inheritance." The request hangs in the air like smoke. Outside, a tugboat sounds its horn on the river, a mournful note that fades into the urban drone. Gina is first, as she has always been first. She rises from her chair, smooths her burgundy power suit, and walks to her father's side. When she speaks, her voice is measured, practiced, perfect. "Dad, everything I am exists because of you. This company isn't just business to Mitt's blood, it's oxygen. When I close my eyes, I see assembly lines. When I dream in profit margins and market share. You taught me that the world respects only strength, only winners. I've given up everything for Kingston: marriage, children, any life outside these walls. The company is my family. You are my purpose. If you give me control, I won't just preserve your legacy, expand it. I'll take us into luxury vehicles, into technology integration, into markets you never imagined. I'll make the Kingston name synonymous, not with Detroit's past, but with America's future. Every decision I make will be a tribute to you." Leo nods slowly, satisfaction spreading across his weathered face. This is what he wanted to hear. This is the hunger that built empires. "The northeastern operations are yours," he says. 3 manufacturing plants, the parts division, and the technology development unit. You'll operate from here, from Detroit. Make me proud, Gina. Gina's smile is sharp and bright as chrome. She returns to her seat like a warrior who has just claimed territory. Regina stands next, and where Gina is all sharp edges and corporate steel, Regina is velvet wrapped around iron. She approaches her father with grace, her silk blouse the color of aged whiskey, her jewelry catching the fluorescent light. When she speaks, her voice is honey and smoke. Daddy, you know I've always been your favorite, even if you won't admit it. She touches his arm, familiar, affectionate. I took the risk you asked me to take. I went to Atlantic City when everyone said it was a gamble, and I turned it into gold. The Kingston Resort and Casino brought in $47 million last year. $47 million in revenue, because I understand something Gina doesn't, that people don't just buy cars. They buy dreams. They buy the feeling of success, of arrival, of having made it. I've built relationships with politicians, with unions, with the money men in New York. I can open doors that are closed to everyone else. Give me my share, and I'll leverage every contact, every relationship, every ounce of Kingston charm to keep this company alive. I love you more than words can express, more than balance sheets can measure. You're not just my father, you're my North Star. Leo grips her hand, warmth flooding his features. The Southern and Mid-Atlantic operations are yours. The hotel division, the leisure properties, and 2 assembly plants in Tennessee and North Carolina. You'll continue running from Atlantic City. Prove me right, Regina. Regina kisses his cheek before returning to her seat, and the 2 older sisters exchange a glance, not hostile, not yet, but measuring, calculating, already dividing the spoils. Now all eyes turn to Cordelia. She hasn't moved from her chair at the far end of the table. She wears a denim shirt under a canvas jacket, no jewelry except a simple watch. Her hands rest flat on the mahogany, calloused from work the others have never done. When she finally speaks, her voice is quiet, but it carries. I can't do this. The temperature in the room drops 10 degrees. Excuse me. Leo's voice is ice. Cordelia looks directly at her father, unflinching. I love you, Dad. I do. But I'm not going to perform for you. I'm not going to reduce everything we are, everything this family should be, into some corporate presentation about loyalty and devotion. Love isn't a transaction. It isn't measured in flattery or traded for inheritance. Cordelia Gina's voice carries a warning, but Cordelia continues, standing now, facing her father across the length of the table. I love you the way a daughter should love a father. Honestly, without calculation. I don't love you more than my sisters, and I won't pretend I do to win a bigger piece of the company. If that's not enough, then maybe I'm not the daughter you want. The silence that follows is absolute. Leo Kingston's face transforms into something terrible, a mask of rage carved from stone, veins standing out on his forehead like cables under stress. His hands grip the table edge until his knuckles go white. Not the daughter I want. His voice starts low, volcanic, building toward eruption. You ungrateful little bitch. I gave you everything. Private schools while I was eating sandwiches at my desk. College, graduate school, every opportunity. And you throw it back in my face with this sanctimonious garbage about honest love. Dad, that's not what you don't love me enough to say it. Fine, then you get nothing. He sweeps his arm across the table, scattering papers like autumn leaves. Nothing. Not a plant, not a dealership, not a single share of stock. You want to play labor organizer, go organize on someone else's dime. You're cut off. Effective immediately. Cordelia stands motionless, absorbing the blow. Color drains from her face, but her voice remains steady. If that's your decision, it is. Get out. Get out of this boardroom. Get out of this building. And get out of my life. Kent Morrison, Senior Vice President and Leo's right hand for 30 years, rises from his position near the wall. Kent is 61, built like a linebacker, gone slightly soft, with iron grey hair and a face weathered by decades in the automotive wars. He wears a tie from 1975 and a wedding ring buffed smooth by time. He has stood beside Leo Kingston through strikes and recessions, through boom times and bailout rumors. He has earned the right to speak truth. Leo, you're making a mistake. Every head turns toward him. Cordelia is the only one who gave you an honest answer, Kent continues, moving toward the table. The other two told you what you wanted to hear. Pretty words. Corporate speak. But Cordelia told you the truth. She loves you without condition, without transaction. That's worth more than all their promises combined. Leo's rage finds a new target. You're defending her. After everything I've built, everything I've given to all of you, you're taking her side. I'm not taking sides. I'm trying to stop you from destroying your family over pride. My family. Leo's laugh is bitter, caustic. My family is this company. My legacy is chrome and steel and American manufacturing. She rejected both, so she rejects me. And if you can't understand that, Kent, then maybe 30 years of loyalty doesn't mean what I thought it did. Kent's jaw tightens. He looks at Leoralee, looks at him. Man sees not the visionary he followed for 3 decades, but an old man drowning in his own ego, unable to distinguish between love and control. Then maybe it doesn't, Kent says quietly. I quit. The words land like a bomb in a library. Gina surges to her feet. Dad, you need Kent. He knows every operation, every contract. I don't need anyone who questions my judgment. Leo roars. Especially not some middle management yes-man who thinks he can lecture me about family. You want to follow her out that door, Kent. Be my guest. You're fired either way. Kent removes his Kingston Automotive ID badge, places it on the mahogany table with a soft click, and walks to where Cordelia stands. Come on, kid. Let's get out of here. They leave together, the door closing behind them with a soft, final sound. The boardroom feels larger now, emptier. Regina shifts uncomfortably in her chair. Even Gina looks shaken, though she quickly masks it with corporate composure. Leo sinks into his chair at the head of the table, suddenly looking every one of his 73 years. His hands tremble slightly before he presses them flat against the mahogany. The division stands, he says, his voice hoarse. Gina gets the northern operations. Regina gets the South and Mid-Atlantic. I'll retain the western plants and the California operations for now. But that'll be divided between you two within the year. We'll make the announcement to the board Thursday, to the press on Friday. Any questions? Gina and Regina exchange glances again, and this time there's something new in their expressions. Not just calculation, but recognition. Recognition that with Cordelia gone and Kent dismissed, there's nothing standing between them and complete control. Nothing but their aging father and his stubborn refusal to fully let go. No questions, Daddy, Regina says softly. Good. Get out, both of you. I need to think. The sisters leave, their heels clicking on marble, their whispers starting before the door fully closes. Plotting already. Dividing the world. Leo Kingston sits alone in his boardroom empire, master of nothing but an empty room and a decision that cannot be undone. Outside the windows, Detroit continues its slow decay. Factories closing, workers leaving, the American automotive dream dissolving like morning frost under a grey November sun. The kingdom is divided. The tragedy has begun. December arrives like a creditor, cold and unforgiving. The Kingston Tower boardroom, once a temple of Leo's absolute authority, now feels like contested territory. The press conference happened 3 days ago. Leo Kingston, standing between his 2 remaining daughters, announcing the restructuring of Kingston Automotive, speaking words like succession planning and strategic division, while cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions about the missing 3rd daughter. Cordelia's name was never mentioned. She had been edited out of the family narrative, like a recall notice buried in fine print. Now Gina sits in her new corner office on the executive floor, larger than before, with windows facing both the river and the city. Her secretary is new, her staff expanded. She holds meetings back to back from 7 in the morning until 8 at night, restructuring departments, reviewing contracts, making it clear that the northeastern operations belong to her now. When executives question her decisions, she reminds them always politely, always with a smile, that her father gave her complete autonomy, that this is her division now. Regina operates from Atlantic City, but her influence reaches back to Detroit through phone calls and carefully placed allies. She has already moved to consolidate the Tennessee and North Carolina plants under her personal control, replacing managers who showed even the slightest loyalty to the old guard. She redecorates her boardwalk office in white leather and gold fixtures, conducts business over champagne lunches, and makes it known that the Kingston Empire is entering a new era, sophisticated, modern, ruthless. Between them, Leo Kingston becomes less a king and more a relic. He still comes to the office, still occupies his corner suite, but the building feels different. People hurry past his door instead of stopping to pay respects. Meetings happen without him. Decisions are made and implemented before he even learns they were being considered. When he questions Gina about a contract cancellation, she pats his hand and tells him not to worry, that she has it handled, that he should rest. When he calls Regina about personnel changes, she's always in a meeting, always unreachable, always calling back 3 days later with apologies and explanations that sound reasonable but feel like dismissals. The empire is slipping through his fingers like motor oil. Kent Morrison doesn't come to the office anymore. He's found work consulting for a small parts manufacturer in Warren, taking a 60% pay cut and a windowless office, but he sleeps better at night. He speaks to Cordelia regularly. She's taken a job with the United Auto Workers Union, helping laid-off Kingston employees file grievance claims and negotiate severance packages. Father and daughter have become the discarded pieces of Leo Kingston's chess game, regrouping on the margins. But there are others in the game, pieces Leo never properly valued. Thomas Gloucester has worked for Kingston Automotive for 40 years, rising from regional sales manager to senior executive vice president. He's a company man, loyal as a golden retriever, with 2 sons who represent different versions of the American dream. Edward Gloucester, 36, is everything Thomas hoped for. Harvard MBA, vice president of strategic planning, married to a lawyer, living in Bloomfield Hills. Edward is competent, respected, poised to inherit his father's position in the company hierarchy. Then there's Eddie. Eddie Gloucester, 34. Born Edmund, but he goes by Eddie because it sounds less formal, less legitimate. Thomas had him with a secretary during a rough patch in his marriage 28 years ago. The affair ended, the marriage survived, and Eddie grew up in a modest apartment in Dearborn with his mother, seeing his father on alternating weekends and holidays. Thomas paid for his education state school, not Harvard, and got him a job in middle management at Kingston. Eddie works in procurement, a decent position but nothing prestigious, nothing that carries real power. He watches his half-brother Edward glide through the executive corridors while he navigates the grey maze of middle management, and the resentment sits in his stomach like battery acid. Eddie Gloucester is smart, ambitious, and tired of being the consolation prize in his father's life. He sits now in a downtown Detroit bar called The Gear Shift, a place where auto workers and office staff mix over cheap beer and defeated dreams. It's 6 in the evening, and the place smells like cigarettes and desperation. Eddie nurses a whiskey, watching the news coverage of Kingston Automotive's restructuring on the television above the bar. Someone slides onto the stool beside him. Rough day. The voice belongs to Oscar Regan, one of Regina's people, a corporate lawyer who specializes in hostile takeovers and strategic acquisitions. He's 38, wearing a suit that costs more than Eddie makes in a month, with slicked back hair and a smile like a knife. Every day's rough when you're invisible, Eddie says. Oscar orders a scotch, expensive, and turns to study Eddie with the intensity of someone evaluating merchandise. You're Thomas Gloucester's kid, right? The younger one, the bastard one, if we're being accurate. I don't care about accurate. I care about useful. Oscar sips his scotch. You know what I see when I look at Kingston Automotive, a company eating itself alive. Leo's losing his grip. Gina and Regina are circling each other like sharks. And in the middle of it all, there are people like you, smart, undervalued, perfectly positioned to benefit if things shift the right way. Eddie sets down his whiskey glass, the ice cubes settling with a soft clink. What are you proposing? Oscar leans closer, lowering his voice beneath the jukebox, playing Rio's Speedwagon. Regina is building a coalition. She wants full control, not just her division, but everything. Gina's in the way. Leo's in the way. But if the right information reached the right people at the right time, if certain documents surfaced, if certain executives suddenly lost confidence in the current leadership structure, things could change very quickly. And where do I fit into Regina's revolution? You've got access. Middle management always does. You see everything. You're trusted with mundane details that powerful people forget matter. You can move through the building invisible. Get me internal memos, financial projections, anything that shows Gina overstepping or Leo losing capacity to lead. Help Regina consolidate power, and when the dust settles, you won't be in middle management anymore. You'll be somewhere your talents are actually appreciated. Eddie considers this, rolling the whiskey glass between his palms. His whole life has been about being the lesser son, the mistake, the one who doesn't quite measure up. Edward gets the corner office and the family respect. Eddie gets the windowless cubicle and the awkward silences at Thanksgiving. I want it in writing, Eddie says. A contract guaranteeing my position once Regina takes control. Oscar's smile widens. Smart, I'll have something drawn up by tomorrow. Welcome to the winning team, Eddie. They shake hands, and Eddie feels something shift inside him, not quite pride, not quite shame, but the electric sensation of finally being seen, finally mattering, even if the attention comes from predators recognizing another predator. Across town, in a modest apartment in Ferndale, Cordelia sits at a kitchen table covered with workers' compensation forms and unemployment claims. The apartment is small, one-bedroom, old radiator heat. Windows that rattle when trucks pass, but it's hers, paid for with her union salary. No Kingston money, no inheritance, just honest work for honest pay. Kent Morrison sits across from her, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviews a case file. Johnson family in Hamtramck, he says. Husband worked the Toledo plant for 19 years. Got laid off in October. No severance, no retirement package. Gina's people are claiming he was terminated for cause chronic lateness. It's bullshit. His time cards show perfect attendance. They're manufacturing pretexts to avoid paying out, Cordelia says, making notes. It's happening across all the plants Gina controls. Fire them for cause. Avoid the severance obligations. Save money while destroying lives. Kent removes his glasses, rubs his eyes. He looks older than he did 2 months ago, the weight of exile showing in the lines around his mouth. Your father built that company on the backs of workers like Johnson. Now his daughters are strip mining it for short-term profit. He chose them. He chose this. He chose wrong. He knows it, even if he won't admit it. Cordelia's phone rings, a clunky beige wall-mounted unit with a spiral cord. She answers, listens, and her expression shifts from neutral to concerned. When? Is he okay? Yes, I'll try. She hangs up, stares at the phone like it might bite her. That was Gloria from the executive floor. Cordelia says quietly, Dad collapsed this morning. They took him to Detroit General. It's his heart again. Kent stands immediately. We should go. He doesn't want to see me, Kent. He made that clear. He's a stubborn old fool. That doesn't mean you have to be. They drive through December darkness to the hospital, a concrete monolith on the city's east side, where the Kingston name bore a wing in 1972. Leo Kingston lies in a private room on the cardiac floor, connected to monitors that beat with mechanical regularity. He looks small in the hospital bed, diminished, the industrial titan reduced to flesh and failing systems. Gina and Regina are already there, standing on opposite sides of the bed like opposing generals at a negotiation. They look up when Cordelia enters, and the surprise on their faces would be almost comical if the circumstances were different. What are you doing here? Gina asks, her voice sharp as sheet metal. I heard Dad was sick. You lost the right to care about that when you walked away, Regina says. But there's less conviction in her voice than usual. The hospital setting has stripped away some of the corporate veneer. Leo's eyes open, focusing slowly. When he sees Cordelia, his expression cycles through confusion, recognition, and something that might be regret before hardening into stubborn pride. Get out, he rasps, his voice weak but still carrying command. I don't want you here. Dad, I said, get out. You made your choice. Now live with it. Cordelia stands frozen for a moment, and Kent sees the pain flash across her face before she masters it. She nods once, turns, and walks out of the room without another word. Kent follows, but not before locking eyes with Leo, a look that carries 30 years of friendship and the weight of profound disappointment. In the hospital corridor, fluorescent lights humming overhead, Cordelia leans against the wall and closes her eyes. He's going to die hating me, she says. No, Kent replies. He's going to die realizing you were right. But by then, it'll be too late. Leo Kingston is released from the hospital 4 days later with a prescription for nitroglycerin tablets and strict orders to reduce stress. The doctors speak to him like he's a child rest medication, light exercise, no alcohol, delegate responsibilities. They do understand that asking Leo Kingston to reduce stress is like asking the Detroit River to flow uphill. He returns to Kingston Tower on a grey morning when ice coats the streets and the sky threatens snow. His driver, new one, young, doesn't know to take the back entrance, drops him at the main lobby. Leo moves slowly through the revolving doors, feeling every one of his 73 years, and the workers in the lobby barely look up. No greetings, no respectful nods, just people hurrying past with coffee cups and urgent destinations. The elevator ride to the executive floor feels longer than usual. His secretary, Gloria, who has been with him for 18 years, sits at her desk outside his office with red eyes and a cardboard box. She's packing her belongings, framed photos, a ceramic mug that says "World's Best Secretary," a small potted plant. Gloria, what's happening? She looks up, startled, guilty. Mr. Kingston, Gina said you were going to be working reduced hours? that you wouldn't need full-time administrative support anymore. She's reassigning me to the communications department. She can't do that. You work for me. She's head of Northeastern operations now, sir. She says it's a restructuring decision. I'm sorry, I tried to fight it, but... Gloria's voice cracks. I have 3 years until retirement. I can't risk my pension. Leo's hands shake, whether from rage or medication or the simple fact of being powerless. He can't tell. It's fine, Gloria. I understand. He enters his office and finds it changed. Small things, but significant. Files have been removed from his desk. His Rolodex is gone. The keys to the executive conference room are missing from his drawer. Even his favorite fountain, Penamont Blanc, given to him by the board in 1975, has vanished. He picks up the phone to call Gina. Dead. No dial tone. His private line has been disconnected. Leo Kingston stands in his own office, in the building he built, and realizes he has become a ghost in his own empire. Meanwhile, in Atlantic City, Regina hosts a lunch meeting at the Kingston Resort's penthouse restaurant. Her guests are 3 members of Kingston Automotive Empire board of directors, men with grey hair and expensive watches who have grown concerned about the company's direction. She serves them Chilean sea bass and vintage champagne while making her case. Gentlemen, we need to discuss the elephant in the room, Regina says, her voice smooth as silk. My father is no longer capable of leading this company. You saw the hospitalization. You've seen the erratic decisions firing Kent Morrison, disinheriting Cordelia. These impulsive restructurings. The man is 73, with a failing heart and declining judgment. Out of respect for everything he's built, we need to move forward with a formal vote to remove him from active management. Board member Harrison speaks first, carefully. That's a serious step, Regina. Leo founded this company, which is exactly why we owe it to his legacy to preserve it. Right now, we're hemorrhaging money. Market share is down 8% this quarter. The Japanese are destroying us. We need unified leadership, not a sick old man clinging to power while the ship sinks. She refills their champagne glasses. I'm proposing a motion for the January board meeting. Gina and I will assume co-chairmanship. Dad can keep an honorary title, founder emeritus, something dignified. But operational control transfers to us completely. The board members exchange glances. They've seen this coming. They've known for months that Leo was losing his grip. Regina is simply saying what they've all been thinking. You'd need your sister's support, another board member notes. Can you guarantee Gina will back this play? Regina's smile is confident. Gina wants Dad out as much as I do. We may have our differences, but we agree on this. The old guard needs to step aside. What Regina doesn't mention is the meeting she had with Gina 2 days ago, a tense conference call where they agreed to cooperate long enough to remove their father, and then, well, then they would see who really deserved to run Kingston Automotive alone. Back in Detroit, Eddie Gloucester delivers his first package to Oscar Ragona, manila envelope containing internal financial projections, cost overrun reports, and emails showing Gina authorizing questionable severance denials. Nothing technically illegal, but damaging. The kind of information that makes boards nervous and lawyers excited. Beautiful work, Oscar says, sliding Eddie a check. Keep them coming. Regina's very pleased. Eddie pockets the check and feels that electric thrill again. He's no longer invisible. He matters. That evening, as snow begins to fall over Detroit, Leo Kingston sits alone in his office after everyone else has gone home. The building is silent, except for the hum of heating systems and the distant sound of traffic. He looks at the photographs on his wall, the young man who built an empire, who shook hands with presidents, who believed that strength and will were all that mattered. Now he understands what Cordelia tried to tell him. Power isn't loyalty, control isn't love, and kingdoms built on fear crumble the moment the king shows weakness. His daughters are circling. His empire is being carved up like a carcass. And Leo Kingston, who spent his life taking, finally understands the cost of never learning to give. He reaches for the phone, his personal cell phone, not the disconnected office line, and dials a number he hasn't called in weeks. It rings 4 times before Cordelia answers. "It's me," Leo says, his voice cracking. "I need help." January 1982 arrives with a blizzard that buries Detroit under 14 inches of snow. The city grinds to a halt, schools close, factories shut down, highways become parking lots of abandoned cars. The temperature drops to 8 degrees below zero, and the wind off the river cuts through clothing like sheet metal edges. Weather forecasters call it the worst winter storm in 20 years. They use words like dangerous, life-threatening, seek shelter immediately. Cordelia meets her father at a diner in Greek Town, a 24-hour place called the Athenian that serves coffee strong enough to strip paint and breakfast at any hour. Leo arrives, looking worse than he did in the hospital. His expensive overcoat hangs loose on a frame that has lost 20 pounds. His silver hair needs cutting, and his hands shake as he grips his coffee cup. They sit in a corner booth while the blizzard rages outside, turning the world into static. "Thank you for coming," Leo says, and the humility in his voice is so foreign that Cordelia almost doesn't recognize it as her father speaking. "You said you needed help." Leo stares into his coffee like it might contain answers. "They're pushing me out, both of them. Gina disconnected my phone lines, reassigned my staff, locked me out of financial systems. Regina's lobbying the board for a vote to remove me from operational control. I'm being erased from my own company. What did you expect, Dad? You divided the kingdom and gave them the keys. They're just doing what you taught them, taking everything they can get. I taught them to be strong, not treacherous. You taught them there's no difference." Cordelia's voice is gentle but firm. "You taught them that loyalty is weakness, that sentiment is a liability, that the world belongs to whoever grabs hardest. They're your daughters. They learned well." Leo's jaw tightens, but he doesn't argue. He can't. The evidence is incontrovertible. He created Gina and Regina in his own image, and now that image is devouring him. "I was wrong," he says finally, the words emerging like broken glass. "About you. About what matters. I was wrong." Cordelia reaches across the table, places her hand over his trembling one. "I know. Can you forgive me? I already have. But forgiveness doesn't solve the problem you've created. Then help me fix it. You understand the company. You know the workers. You see things your sisters never will. Help me stop them before they destroy everything." Cordelia withdraws her hand, and in that gesture, Leo sees the answer before she speaks it. "Dad, I can't. Even if I wanted to jump back into that world, which I don't, I have no authority, no position, no power base. You made sure of that. You cut me out completely, publicly, permanently. Nobody at Kingston would listen to me, even if I tried. Kent would. Some of the old guard is gone. Gina and Regina have been systematically removing anyone loyal to you for months. You're surrounded by people on their payroll, following their orders. It's over." Leo sinks back into the booth, the defeat visible in every line of his weathered face. Outside, the blizzard intensifies, wind howling like something dying. "What do I do?" he asks, and it's the question of a frightened old man, not an industrial titan. "You survive," Cordelia says. "You let go of the company, and you survive. Move to Florida. Find a beach. Learn to fish. Write your memoirs. Anything but fighting a war you've already lost. Kingston Automotive is my life. Then I guess you need to find a new life. They part outside the diner, Leo climbing into a taxi that disappears into the white storm, Cordelia watching him go with something between pity and sorrow in her eyes. Kent waits for her in his car, engine running for heat. How bad? He asks as she slides into the passenger seat. Terminal. He's finally realizing what he's done, but it's too late to undo it. At Kingston Tower, the January board meeting convenes despite the blizzard. Board members arrive from across the country. Flights delayed, but determination unwavering. They gather in the mahogany boardroom where Leo divided his kingdom 2 months ago, but today, Leo sits not at the head of the table, but in the middle, surrounded by people who used to defer to him and now regard him with the clinical interest of accountants reviewing a liability. Gina stands at the head of the table, Regina conferenced in via speakerphone from Atlantic City. Gina presents the motion with corporate precision. She uses slides, charts, financial projections, all showing declining performance under current leadership structure, all carefully edited to make Leo look incompetent, outdated, a relic from an era that no longer exists. Gentlemen, the data speaks for itself, Gina says, her voice carrying the absolute confidence of someone who has already counted the votes. Market share down 11% year over year. Production costs up 18%. We've lost 2 major dealer networks to Honda. The unions are threatening strikes at 3 plants. Consumer confidence in American automotive is at an all-time low, and Kingston is hemorrhaging our most talented people to foreign manufacturers. We need decisive, unified leadership. We need a clear vision for the future. What we don't need is divided authority and compromised decision-making capability. She doesn't say senile old man, but everyone in the room hears it anyway. Regina's voice crackles through the speakerphone. IVA secured commitments from the Tennessee and North Carolina operations to increase production efficiency by 22% through automation and workforce reduction. But I can't implement these changes while fighting through layers of outdated approval processes. We need streamlined command structure. Gina and I are proposing co-chairmanship with full operational authority. Dad retains his seat on the board, of course, and the honorary title of founder. But day-to-day control transfers to us immediately. Leo sits silent through the presentation, watching his life's work dismantled in PowerPoint slides and conference call audio. He thinks about speaking, about defending himself, about reminding these men that he built this company from nothing while they were still in prep school. But the words won't come. What defense does he have? The numbers are real. His judgment has failed. He gave his daughters the weapons, and now they're using them expertly. The vote is called, 8 in favor of the motion, 2 abstentions. 1 opposed Thomas Gloucester, who votes no out of some vestigial loyalty to the old ways. But even Thomas looks relieved when the result is announced. It's over quickly, professionally, without drama. Kingdoms fall in boardrooms, not with war cries, but with Robert's Rules of Order and voice votes. Leo Kingston is removed from operational control of Kingston Automotive, the company he founded 36 years ago. He walks out of the boardroom into a building that no longer belongs to him. His keycard no longer accesses the executive floor. Security plight, but firm escorts him to collect his personal effects. He's given 2 hours to clear his office. Gina watches from her doorway as movers carry boxes of her father's belongings to the elevator. She feels nothing, not triumph, not guilt, just the cold satisfaction of a successful corporate maneuver. Regina calls to congratulate her, and they speak in the careful language of allies who know they will eventually be enemies. Phase 1 complete. Regina says. Phase 1, Gina agrees. Leo moves into a suite at the Westin Hotel downtown, unable to face the empty mansion in Grasse Ponte, where every room echoes with ghosts of family, dinners and birthday parties and Christmases that seem impossibly distant now. He sits in a hotel room that costs $400 a night and feels cheaper than the tenement apartment of his childhood. Kent visits him there on a Tuesday evening, bringing Chinese takeout and bourbon. You were right, Leo says, already drunk. About Cordelia, about all of it. I was so goddamn sure that strength was all that mattered, that if I just grabbed hard enough, held tight enough, I could control everything. But you can't control love. You can't force loyalty. I know that now. Knowing it now doesn't help much, does it? Kent says, not unkindly. No, it doesn't. Meanwhile, at Kingston Automotive headquarters, Eddie Gloucester continues his ascent. Regina has made good on her promises. He's been promoted to Director of Strategic Procurement, a position that comes with a real office, a secretary, and access to executive meetings. He sits in on discussions about plant closures and workforce reductions, about selling off unprofitable divisions and maximizing shareholder value. He offers suggestions that are actually heard, actually implemented. His half-brother Edward watches this rise with growing suspicion. How did you manage this? Edward asks, cornering Eddie in the executive parking garage one evening. 6 months ago you were pushing paper in middle management. Now you're in Regina's inner circle. What did you do? Eddie smiles, unlocking his new Cara Kingston Executive Series sedan, lease courtesy of the company. I made myself useful. You should try it sometime instead of coasting on Dad's reputation. Useful how? What are you giving them? Information, loyalty, whatever they need. It's called adapting, Edward. The old world is dead. Dad's generation is finished. Either you evolve or you get left behind. Edward watches his half-brother drive away, and something cold settles in his stomach. He knows Eddie knows the resentment that has simmered for 34 years. Knows the hunger, knows the willingness to do whatever it takes to escape the shadow of illegitimacy. Edward has always been the good son, the legitimate heir, the one who played by the rules. But the rules have changed, and Eddie is writing new ones. February brings no relief from winter's cruelty. The blizzards continue, one after another, burying Detroit under snow that never melts. Just accumulates in grey frozen mountains along every street. The auto plants run at half capacity. Unemployment climbs past 15%. Reagan's economic policies have not yet produced the promised recovery, and the Rust Belt rusts faster, deeper, more completely than anyone predicted. Thomas Gloucester arrives at his office on a Monday morning to find his desk cleared, his computer password changed, and a security guard waiting with a cardboard box. I'm sorry, Mr. Gloucester, the guard says, genuinely apologetic. Orders from Ms. Regina. You're being let go. Effective immediately. Thomas stares at the box, at the security guard, at the office that has been his second home for 40 years. There's been a mistake. I'm Senior Executive Vice President. You can't just, it's not a mistake, Dad. Thomas turns to find Eddie standing in the doorway, wearing a new suit that probably cost $3,000, carrying himself with the confidence of someone who belongs in the executive corridors. What did you do? Thomas asks, his voice barely a whisper. What you should have done years ago. I adapted. Regina's restructuring the senior leadership. Your generation is out. Mine is in. It's business, Dad. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. Thomas's face flushes red. I got you this job. I got you into this company. And you sold me out. Eddie's expression hardens. You got me a middle management position, and patted yourself on the back for doing your bastard son a favor. You gave Edward everything, the education, the opportunities, the family name without the shame attached. You gave me the scraps and expected gratitude. Well, here's my gratitude, Dad. Enjoy retirement. Thomas Gloucester packs his belongings into the cardboard box with shaking hands. 40 years reduced to framed photos, desk plaques, and a coffee mug that says, "World's Greatest Dad." The irony of that mug sitting atop everything else is not lost on him. He leaves Kingston Tower for the last time, carrying his box through the lobby where young workers stream past without recognition, without respect, without knowing or caring that he once mattered here. At the Westin Hotel, Leo Kingston's suite has become a tomb. He doesn't shave anymore, doesn't change clothes, orders room service that sits untouched on trays until housekeeping removes it. His daughters don't call. The board doesn't consult him. The company moves forward without him. And the daily realization that he is unnecessary, that he was always unnecessary, that the empire never needed the emperor crushes him more completely than the heart attack ever did. Kent visits, tries to get him to eat, to shower, to engage with the world beyond the hotel windows. You can't give up, Leo. Why not? I've got nothing left. The company's gone. My daughters hate me. I spent my whole life building, and it turns out I built nothing but my own prison. You've still got Cordelia. Cordelia deserves better than a broken-down old man who figured out he was wrong 20 years too late. But Cordelia comes anyway, despite everything. She visits her father in his hotel suite and finds him unwashed, unshaven, surrounded by empty liquor bottles and unopened mail. She doesn't lecture or judge. She simply sits beside him and holds his hand while he cries deep, wrenching sobs that sound like something breaking permanently inside him. "I'm sorry," he keeps saying. "God, Cordelia, I'm so sorry. I know, Dad, I know." Meanwhile, the alliance between Gina and Regina fractures exactly as both of them knew it would. They fight over resources, over authority, over vision for the company's future. Gina wants to invest in technology and automation. Regina wants to slash costs and maximize short-term profits. Their conference calls become shouting matches. Their emails drip with barely concealed contempt. The board watches nervously as the company they hoped to stabilize descends into civil war between two equally ruthless sisters. In late February, Regina makes her move. She's been quietly courting a Japanese automotive consortium interested in acquiring Kingston's southern operations. The offer is substantial $300 million for the Tennessee and North Carolina plants, the dealer networks, and the hotel properties. Regina will walk away wealthy beyond measure, and Kingston Automotive will be dismembered, sold for parts like a junked car in a salvage yard. When Gina discovers the planned sale, she calls Regina at 2 a.m, her voice vibrating with rage. "You're selling. You're actually going to sell out to the Japanese." "I'm maximizing shareholder value," Regina replies coolly. "Something you'd understand if you spent less time playing engineer and more time reading balance sheets. This company is dying, Gina. I'm getting out while there's still something to sell. Dad built this company. It's our legacy. Dad's legacy is failure and delusion. I'm not going down with the ship out of some misguided sense of loyalty to a brand." The deal closes in March. You can either support it or get crushed by it. Gina hangs up and stands at her office windows, looking out at the frozen Detroit River, at the city that has defined her entire life, at the empire that is crumbling faster than even she can control. She makes a decision. If Regina is going to sell the South, then Gina will sell the North. Ford has been sniffing around, interested in Kingston's technology division and the Michigan plants. She'll negotiate her own deal, get out with her fortune intact, and let the Kingston name die with the father who couldn't hold on to it. The empire is being liquidated. The kingdom is being sold for scrap, and Leo Kingston, lying in a hotel bed in a suite that smells like defeat and expensive bourbon, knows none of it yet. March comes in like a wrecking ball. The announcements hit the news on the same day. Kingston, Automotive S. Southern operations sold to Yamato Motors for $280 million. The Northern Operations and Technology Division sold to Ford Motor Company for $310 million. The Kingston name, which has meant American manufacturing for 36 years, will be dissolved by summer. The plants will be rebranded, the workers absorbed or laid off, the legacy erased as completely as if it never existed. Wall Street celebrates. The stock price surges. Analysts call it a smart move, a recognition of market realities, a wise decision to liquidate before total collapse. They use words like strategic and forward-thinking and maximizing stakeholder value. In Detroit, 3,000 workers learn they no longer have jobs. The pink slips go out on a Friday afternoon, timed carefully to minimize disruption, to get people out of the plants before anger can organize into action. Security guards stand by, ready for trouble. Union reps scramble to negotiate severance packages that don't exist, to save pensions that have already been raided, to make the balance sheets look better for the sale. Cordelia stands outside the Warren plant as workers stream out, carrying boxes of personal belongings, faces slack with shock. Some cry, some rage. Most just look hollow, emptied out, like someone reached inside and removed something essential. These are people who worked for Kingston for 20 years, 30 years, who bought houses and raised families on Kingston wages, who believed, foolishly. It turns out that loyalty meant something, that hard work guaranteed security. What do we do now? A woman asks Cordelia. She's maybe 55, has worked the line since 1968, and her hands shake as she holds her termination notice. I'm too old to start over. Nobody's hiring. What do I do? Cordelia has no answer that helps. She takes the woman's information, promises to file grievances, to fight for severance, to do everything the union can do, but they both know it's useless. The company is gone. The fight is over. Kent stands beside Cordelia in the March cold, watching the human wreckage of corporate efficiency. Your sisters did this, he says quietly. They walked away rich and left a crater. My father did this, Cordelia corrects. He taught them that people are resources, that communities are assets to be liquidated. Gina and Regina just followed the lesson plan. At the Westin Hotel, Leo Kingston watches the news coverage of his company's dissolution on a television that might as well be broadcasting his own funeral. CNBC shows the stock price climbing. Local news shows workers leaving plants. Financial analysts explain why this is actually good news for the automotive sector, why sometimes you have to destroy in order to build, why the market is always right. Leo's hands don't shake anymore. They've gone numb. Everything has gone numb. He drinks bourbon at 10 in the morning, at 2 in the afternoon, at midnight. The bottles accumulate on the dresser like trophies for a competition nobody wins. The hotel has stopped sending housekeeping. He screamed at them last week, accused them of stealing things that were never there. And now they leave him alone in his deteriorating suite. When Kent comes to check on him, he finds Leo standing at the window in stained clothes, talking to himself, or to ghosts, or to the empty air. They took it, Leo mutters. Everything. Just took it and walked away. 36 years, and they sold it like scrap metal. Leo, you need help. Real help. Let me call a doctor. Doctors can't fix this. This isn't a heart problem. This is, Leo trails off, loses the thought, finds it again. I did this. I built the bomb and handed them the detonator and acted surprised when they used it. You need to eat something. When's the last time you ate? Leo turns from the window, and Kent barely recognizes him. He's lost 40 pounds. His skin has a grey pallor. His eyes have the unfocused quality of someone who's stopped engaging with consensus reality. This isn't grief anymore. This is something broken that won't heal. Where's Cordelia? Leo asks suddenly. I need to see Cordelia. I need to tell her. He sinks into a chair, head in his hands. What did I need to tell her? I'll call her, Kent says, reaching for the phone, genuinely frightened now. Cordelia finds her father 3 days later. Not at the Westin, but wandering the streets of Corktown in a snowstorm, wearing a bathrobe and slippers, confused about where he is or how he got there. A homeless veteran recognized him from television coverage and called the number on the Union pamphlet. Cordelia had been distributing at plant closures. She drives him to Detroit General, the same hospital where his heart failed months ago. But this time, the problem isn't cardiac. The doctors use words like acute psychological crisis and dissociative episode and severe depression with psychotic features. They want to admit him to the psychiatric ward for observation. But Leo refuses, becomes agitated, starts shouting about conspiracies and theft and daughters who are vultures circling carrion. Cordelia signs him out against medical advice and takes him to her small apartment in Ferndale. She sets him up in her bedroom while she sleeps on the couch. She feeds him soup and makes him shower and sits with him during the nights when he wakes up screaming about assembly lines that have stopped moving, about workers whose faces he can't remember, about kingdoms built on sand that dissolved in the rain. I can't tell what's real anymore, Leo admits one night, his voice small and frightened in the darkness. Sometimes I'm back in the factory in 1946, and my hands are young and strong. Sometimes I am in the boardroom, and you all there, you and your mother and your sisters. Everything is fine. Then I blink, and I'm here, and nothing makes sense. You're safe, Dad. I've got you. Why are you helping me? After everything I did, because you're my father. That doesn't change. Leo cries again, the way he's been crying for weeks, helpless. Childlike tears that seem to come from somewhere deeper than grief, from a place where regret and loss and recognition of wasted years accumulate into something unbearable. Meanwhile, in Atlantic City, Regina Kingston discovers that wealth doesn't insulate you from consequences. The sale to Yamato Motors goes through, but the Japanese consortium is meticulous, thorough, and utterly unforgiving of irregularities. Their forensic accountants find discrepancies in the book's inflated asset valuations, hidden liabilities, pension funds that were borrowed against and never repaid. Regina's creative accounting, the same strategies that made quarterly reports look good, now appear to be what they always were: fraud. Federal investigators begin asking questions. The SEC opens an inquiry. Regina's lawyers assure her it's routine, that everyone does this, that she'll be fine. But the calls from board members stop coming. The invitations to charity galas dry up. The friends who toasted her success 6 weeks ago suddenly can't remember her name. Oscar Regan, the lawyer who helped orchestrate so much of Regina's strategy, is arrested on March 23rd for securities fraud and racketeering. He's facing 20 years. The prosecutors offer him a deal: testify against Regina, provide documentation of her involvement, and they'll recommend reduced sentencing. Oscar takes the deal. In Detroit, Gina faces different consequences. The Ford acquisition included assumptions about production capacity and workforce stability. But the mass layoffs triggered union actions, wildcat strikes, and a public relations nightmare. Ford executives who promised to honor Kingston's legacy discover that the technology division was years behind where Gina claimed. The patents are outdated. The research was exaggerated. The innovation was smoke and mirrors designed to inflate the sale price. Ford threatens to void the acquisition or demand a massive price reduction. Their lawyers file breach of contract suits. Gina's personal guarantees on certain representations suddenly matter very much, and her personal fortune, $200 million from the sailors, suddenly at risk. She drinks alone in her Bloomfield Hills mansion. Surrounded by art she bought to prove she had arrived, wearing designer clothes that no longer feel like armor, and realizes that everything she won is slipping through her fingers like transmission fluid. Thomas Gloucester reads about the investigations in the Detroit Free Press while sitting in his modest ranch house in Warren, the house he's lived in for 30 years, the house he'll probably die in now that his Kingston pension has evaporated in the corporate dissolution. His wife sits across from him, silent, knowing better than to say what they were both thinking, that their son destroyed his father for nothing, that Eddie's betrayal gained him a position in a company that no longer exists. Eddie himself is learning the same lesson. Regina's legal troubles have exposed everyone associated with her, including ambitious middle managers who traded information for advancement. Eddie has been subpoenaed to testify before a grand jury about his role in gathering confidential documents. His new position vanished when the company dissolved. His career is radioactive. No automotive company will touch him, and his father won't return his calls. He sits in a bar not to gearshift anymore, somewhere cheaper. Darkerand understands that he destroyed his relationships, his reputation, and his father's life in exchange for a title that lasted 6 weeks and a paycheck that bounced. April brings rain instead of snow, but it doesn't feel like spring. It feels like everything solid is dissolving, turning to mud, washing away into the sewers and the river and the lake beyond. Detroit weeps, and nobody notices because Detroit has been weeping for years. Leo Kingston's moments of lucidity become rarer, shorter, more fractured. Some days he knows where he is, in Cordelia's apartment, safe, cared for by the daughter he threw away. Other days he thinks he's still at Kingston Tower, still making decisions, still mattering. He picks up the phone to call board members who no longer take his calls about a company that no longer exists. Cordelia gently takes the phone from his hands and redirects him, guides him back to reality as carefully as leading a child through traffic. Kent comes by daily, bringing groceries, helping Cordelia manage the weight of caring for a man who is physically present but mentally adrift. They do untalk about the medical bills piling up. Leo's insurance lapsed when he was removed from the company, and psychiatric care doesn't come cheap. They don't talk about Cordelia's savings evaporating. They just do what needs doing because that's all there is left. He asked for his mother this morning, Cordelia tells Kent quietly while Leo sleeps in the next room. She's been dead 40 years, but he wanted her. He was crying for his mama like a little boy. Kent has no comfort to offer because there is no comfort. They're watching a man dissolve. Watching decades of iron will and ruthless ambition reveal themselves as armor over wounds that never healed. Leo Kingston conquered an industry but never conquered the frightened child from the tenements who believed that safety only came through control. On April 14th, federal marshals arrest Regina Kingston at her Atlantic City penthouse. The charges include securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. The bail is set at $5 million. She posts it, using the remains of her fortune. Money that's frozen pending civil litigation but temporarily accessible for bail. Her lawyer a new one, expensive. The kind that represents senators and mob bosses, tells her she's looking at 15 to 20 years if convicted. Regina calls Gina for the first time in 6 weeks. desperation overriding pride. "They're destroying me," Regina says, her voice shaking. "We need to present a united front. If we coordinate our legal strategies, show that we were acting on Dad's behalf, that he directed." "Don't call me again," Gina interrupts, her voice cold as January. "My lawyers have advised me that any contact between us can be used to demonstrate conspiracy. Whatever happens to you is your problem, not mine." The line goes dead, and Regina understands with perfect clarity that she is alone. The sister she fought beside, fought against, competed with for their entire lives won't even pretend solidarity. They built nothing together except ruins. Gina's own situation deteriorates daily. The Ford litigation has frozen her assets. Her accountants have discovered irregularities that she claims she knew nothing about, creative bookkeeping by subordinates, inflated projections by the technology division. But ignorance is not a defense when you were the executive in charge. The mansion goes on the market. The art gets auctioned. The designer clothes that marked her ascent now hang in a closet in a Southfield apartment that rents for $1,500 a month. She drives past Kingston Tower one afternoon in early April, it's being rebranded as part of the Ford acquisition. The signage already coming down, and feels nothing. Not grief, not regret, just emptiness. She spent 42 years building a self, and that self was vice president of Kingston Automotive. Now Kingston Automotive doesn't exist, and she doesn't know who she is in its absence. Thomas Gloucester suffers a stroke on April 19th. Its minor doctors call it a warning, a sign of stress and high blood pressure, but at 61 with no job and vanishing savings, minor medical events become catastrophic. His wife, Margaret, drives him home from the hospital, and they sit in their living room, the television playing to an empty room while they contemplate the reality that they will spend their retirement poor after a lifetime of hard work and loyalty. Edward, their legitimate son, helps however he can, paying some bills, bringing groceries, but he has his own family, his own mortgage, his own uncertain future in an industry that's hemorrhaging jobs. He can't save his parents any more than anyone can save anyone in this collapsing world. Eddie doesn't visit. Eddie has disappeared into the grey economy of Detroit, taking cash jobs, avoiding subpoenas, drinking too much, and understanding too late that betrayal is a fire that burns the arsonist first. By the end of April, Leo Kingston has stopped speaking entirely. He sits in a chair by Cordelia's window, staring out at the street, at people walking past who don't know him, don't remember him, never heard of Kingston Automotive or the man who built it. Sometimes tears run down his face. Sometimes his lips move silently, rehearsing conversations with ghosts. But mostly he just sits, a monument to the cost of confusing power with love, control with family, empire with meaning. Cordelia holds his hand and reads to him not business reports or automotive journals, but poetry, novels, things that have nothing to do with the world that destroyed him. She doesn't know if he hears her, but she reads anyway, offering what comfort she can to the father who took so long to understand what comfort was. May arrives with unseasonable heat, the kind that makes asphalt shimmer and tempers flare. Detroit bakes under a sun that feels punitive, angry, like the city is being punished for sins it can't quite name. The unemployment rate hits 17%. Foreclosure notices paper entire neighborhoods. The American automotive dream doesn't just die, it rots in public, stinking up the streets. On May 3rd, Regina Kingston's trial date is set for September. Her lawyers have stopped returning calls promptly. The bail conditions require her to remain in New Jersey, confined to a supervised apartment in Newark, wearing an ankle monitor like a common criminal. The penthouse is gone, seized as proceeds of fraud. The diamonds are in evidence bags. The silk and champagne lifestyle has been replaced by supervised check-ins and mandatory drug testing. Because the court doesn't trust that she won't flee. She calls Cordelia on a Tuesday afternoon, desperate, grasping at the only family connection that might still exist. "I need help," Regina says, her voice stripped of its usual confidence. "I know I don't deserve it. I know what we did to you, to Dad. But I'm drowning here and I don't know who else to call." Cordelia stands in her kitchen, the phone cord stretched tight, looking at her father asleep in the chair by the window. What kind of help? Money. Legal fees are eating everything. If I don't come up with $200,000 by next month, my lawyers will withdraw. I'll have a public defender against federal prosecutors who want to make an example of me. Please, Cordelia. I'm your sister. You sold the company Dad built. You fired 3,000 people. You committed fraud and blamed everyone else. And now you want me who you cut out, who you dismissed, who you treated like garbage, to save you. Yes, Regina whispers. Yes, I'm asking. Cordelia is silent for a long moment, and in that silence, Regina hears the answer. "I can't help you," Cordelia says finally. "I'm taking care of Dad with money I don't have. I'm helping workers you destroyed file for unemployment and food stamps. I have nothing left to give you, Regina. You made your choices. Now you live with them." "Cordelia, please," but Cordelia has already hung up. In Southfield, Gina Kingston receives notice that the Ford litigation has been settled. She will pay $8 million in damages and accept a lifetime ban from serving as an officer or director of any publicly traded company. The settlement wipes out the last of her fortune. At 43 years old, she has a business degree from Penn, 20 years of executive experience, and a resume that guarantees she'll never work in corporate America again. She applies for a job at a Ford dealership in Dearborn, not as management but as a finance officer. The pay is $38,000 a year. She takes it because she has no choice. Her first day, a customer recognizes her from news coverage, makes a joke about fallen empires. Gina smiles professionally and processes the loan application because that's what the job requires. At night, alone in her apartment, with furniture from a liquidation sale, she pours herself cheap wine and tries to understand where it went wrong. She did everything her father taught her. She was strong, ruthless, strategic. She grabbed opportunity with both hands. She never showed weakness, and she ended up with nothing. Thomas Gloucester dies on May 9th. The death certificate says stroke, but everyone who knew him understands it was really heartbreak, shame, and the accumulated weight of betrayal. His funeral is small family, a few old colleagues from Kingston. Nobody from current management, because current management doesn't exist. They bury him in a cemetery in Warren, where the headstones are modest and the grass needs mowing. Eddie doesn't attend. He watches from his car in the parking lot, too ashamed to approach, too broken to face his mother and brother. After the service ends and everyone leaves, he walks to the grave and stands there in the May heat, looking at fresh earth, at a headstone that says beloved husband and father, and he understands that some things, once broken, never get fixed. Kent finds him there an hour later, still standing, still staring. "Your mother's looking for you," Kent says. "I can't face her. I killed him. He died of a stroke." "I killed him," Eddie repeats. "I destroyed him for a promotion that lasted 6 weeks and a paycheck that bounced. What kind of person does that?" Kent has no answer because there is no answer. Eddie is asking the question that Gina and Regina have both asked, that Leo asked before his mind fractured. What kind of person sacrifices everything for ambition? And what do you do when you discover that ambition was just fear wearing a suit? Leo Kingston dies on May 23, 1982, in Cordelia's apartment in Ferndale. It's not dramatic, no grand speeches, no final revelations. Just a quiet cessation of breathing at 4 in the morning while Cordelia sleeps on the couch 15 feet away. She wakes to silence, that particular quality of silence that means absence, and she knows before she checks. She sits beside his body for an hour, holding his hand as it grows cold, crying not for the man who divided his kingdom or destroyed his family, but for the frightened boy from the tenements who never learned that love doesn't have to be earned, that worth doesn't have to be proven, that being enough is enough. Kent arrives at dawn and finds Cordelia still sitting there, still holding Leo's hand. He died alone, she says. After everything, he died alone. He died with you, Kent corrects gently. That's not alone. That's more than he deserved, and exactly what he needed. They arrange a funeral that nobody attends. Gina is too ashamed. Regina legally barred from leaving New Jersey. The old board members have scattered to other companies, other lives. The workers Leo laid off have no interest in mourning the man who destroyed their livelihoods. They bury Leo Kingston in the same cemetery as Thomas Gloucester, just a few rows over. Two men who built their identities on an industry that devoured them. The estate is worthless. Debts exceed assets by hundreds of thousands. The Grass Point mansion goes to creditors. The personal effects get sold at auction. Cordelia inherits nothing but memories and the knowledge that she was right. That love matters more than power. Though being right doesn't pay the medical bills or fill the empty space at the kitchen table. On June 1st, Cordelia is driving back from a union meeting in Hamtramck when a semi-truck runs a red light at the intersection of 8 Mile and Gratiot. She doesn't have time to brake, doesn't have time to react. The impact is instantaneous, catastrophic. The Kingston pickup truck she inherited from her father crumples like tinfoil. She dies at Detroit General, the same hospital where Leo's heart failed, where his mind broke, where the Kingston family trajectory bent toward tragedy. The doctors work for 40 minutes, but the internal injuries are too severe, the damage too complete. She's 34 years old. Kent is the one who identifies the body. He's the one who calls Gina and Regina and tells them their sister is dead. He's the one who arranges the funeral because there's nobody else left. This is your fault, he tells them both, his voice shaking with rage and grief. All of you, Leo, you too, this whole goddamn family. You destroyed each other, fighting over scraps, and now there's nothing left. Nothing but bodies and regrets. Gina and Regina both come to Cordelia's funeral. It's the first time they've seen each other since the company was dissolved. They stand on opposite sides of the grave, unable to meet each other's eyes, unable to speak. They have nothing to say to each other because there are no words adequate to the waste, to the sheer stupid senselessness of how completely they annihilated everything their father built and everyone they loved. The service is attended by workers, dozens of them, former Kingston employees who Cordelia helped file unemployment claims, who she sat with at kitchen tables, who she treated like human beings instead of assets to be liquidated. They weep for her in a way they never wept for Leo, because Cordelia was the only Kingston who understood that people matter more than profits, that dignity matters more than market share. After the service, Gina approaches Kent. I didn't know, she says, and her voice is hollow, empty. I didn't know it would end like this. Yes, you did, Kent replies. You all did. You just didn't care until it was too late. Regina stands at the grave after everyone else has left, looking at the headstone that bears Cordelia's name, and something breaks inside her that's been fracturing for months. She thinks about the penthouse, the champagne, the diamonds, all the things she grabbed so hard they cut her hands. She thinks about her sister, who had nothing but gave everything, who loved without condition and died helping strangers. "I'm sorry," Regina whispers to the fresh earth. "I'm so sorry, but apologies don't resurrect the dead. Regret doesn't undo. The tragedy is complete, irrevocable, absolute." Summer 1982 is brutal, merciless, the kind of heat that turns cities into pressure cookers. Detroit sweats and suffers. The unemployment rate doesn't drop. The plants don't reopen. The American automotive industry continues its slow-motion collapse while Japanese imports multiply like locusts across every suburban driveway. Regina Kingston's trial begins on September 7th. The prosecution presents 43 witnesses, 600 pages of financial documents, and testimony from Oscar Regan that methodically dismantles every defense Regina's lawyers attempt. The jury deliberates for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts, the judge sentences her to 18 years in federal prison. Citing her pattern of sophisticated fraud and complete absence of remorse, she's transferred to a minimum security facility in West Virginia, where she shares a cell with a woman who embezzled from a church. Regina Kingston, who drank champagne at 11 in the morning and wore diamonds to business meetings, now wears prison khakis and works in the facility kitchen for 12 cents an hour. She'll be eligible for parole in 12 years if she demonstrates rehabilitation and good behavior. Some nights, lying on a thin mattress under fluorescent lights that never fully shut off, Regina thinks about Cordelia. Thinks about the sister who loved honestly, who lived with integrity, who died helping people Regina fired without a second thought. Regina will survive prison. She'll serve her time, get paroled eventually, rebuild some shadow of a life. But she'll never escape the knowledge that she destroyed everything worth having in pursuit of things that turned out to be worthless. Gina lasts 8 months at the dealership before being let go, restructuring, they call it. But everyone knows it's because customers don't want to buy cars from the woman who gutted Kingston Automotive. She finds work eventually, office manager at a parts supplier, $32,000 a year. She lives alone in a studio apartment in Ferndale, 3 blocks from where her father died and her sister lived. She passes Cordelia's old building sometimes, sees different people living there now. People who don't know that a good woman died trying to save a father who realized too late what mattered. Gina is 43, has decades ahead of her, and she knows every single day will carry the weight of understanding that she won and lost simultaneously, that she got everything she wanted and ended up with nothing she needed. Eddie Gloucester never recovers. The subpoenas, the investigations, the collapse of everything he betrayed his father to achieve it, crushes him completely. He drinks heavily, moves from apartment to apartment as evictions accumulate, takes jobs that last weeks before his past catches up. His brother Edward tries to help, offers money, offers a place to stay, but Eddie is too ashamed to accept anything from the brother he resented, the father he destroyed. On July 19th, police find Eddie's body in a Dearborn motel room. Officially, it's an overdose alcohol and sleeping pills. The medical examiner rules it accidental, but everyone who knew him understands it was something more deliberate than accident, less decisive than suicide. Just a man who stopped fighting, who let go, who decided that continuing wasn't worth the effort. They bury him beside his father. Edward arranges it, pays for it, stands alone at the grave because their mother is too broken to attend another funeral. The headstone is simple, cheap, says nothing about ambition or betrayal or the cost of becoming someone you're not. Kent Morrison outlives them all. He's 62 now, retired, living on Social Security and a small pension from his pre-Kingston career. He visits the cemetery sometimes, for graves in the same cemetery, a family destroyed by its own hunger, Leo, Cordelia, Thomas, Eddie, for people who might have survived if they'd just learned that enough was enough, that love doesn't require performance, that being human is more important than being powerful. He stands among the headstones on a cool October afternoon as autumn finally arrives, turning leaves gold and red, making the world beautiful in the way endings sometimes are. The Kingston name is gone now. The company dissolved, the buildings rebranded, the workers scattered to other cities, other industries, other lives. In 20 years, nobody will remember Kingston Automotive except as a footnote in Detroit's long decline. A cautionary tale about American manufacturing that failed to adapt, but Kent remembers. He remembers Leo as a young man with fire in his eyes and hunger in his belly, building something from nothing. He remembers Cordelia as a child who asked why money mattered more than people. He remembers when the family was intact, before ambition became poison, before the kingdom needed dividing. He places flowers on Cordelia's grave there. Only one he still visits and says what he's been saying for months now, what he'll probably say until his own ending comes. You were right, kid, about all of it. I'm sorry we didn't listen. The wind carries his words away across the cemetery, across Detroit, across an America that's learning the hard way that you can't build empires on broken people, that kingdoms divided cannot stand, that the cost of winning everything is losing what matters most. The tragedy is complete. The stage is empty. The curtain falls.